I'll be damned. Horikoshi, I've given you a lot of credit in the past for your art improvement, to your writing that constantly breaks the mold of shonen. I've complimented you on giving many of our main characters the spotlight. I've complimented you for the greatness of All Might and also All for One and Stain. But once again, I need to compliment you on something that just blew me away. Cloning. Cloning is something that I have seen a lot in manga, light novels, anime, visual novels, games, movies, live-action TV shows, cartoons. I have seen cloning in everything you can almost imagine. It's something that all of us have seen somewhere else, not just in Boku no Hero Academia. And this is probably not going to be our final time seeing it in another series. However, out of all these things I just mentioned, all these different forms of literature, I have never seen cloning developed like this, especially in literature. Horikoshi, what you just did with cloning makes me respect you more than you really realize when it comes to how you write abilities. I've said many times in the past, one of the things I love about manga or anything, like one of the things that really get me interested in a series, is something that has to do with psychological. Anything psychological is something I kind of like. It's kind of one of the main reasons why I like Tokyo Ghoul. It's because you have these situations to where there's a lot of trauma or psychological trauma to where these characters, have to go through all these types of mental issues. And Twice as a character instantly fits that department of what I like to see in a character. Making him question what he really is and make him have to constantly reinvent himself, change himself. That's kind of what's going on here. And the way the quirk ability cloning was dived into was fascinating, because the way Horikoshi gave this extra layer of depth to Twice with his ability makes me respect Horikoshi as a writer. But also, Twice as a character, after this chapter, just one chapter, just one, okay? I'm not talking about 5, I'm not talking about 2, I'm not talking about 10, whatever. One chapter, just after one chapter, this was my first time seeing this character, which is not, but this was my first time seeing this character in the series. This character would instantly be in my top 10 favorites so far of Boku no Hero Academia because of the presentation of him, the way he got this characterization with this chapter. And the reason for this is because of his cloning ability and what this really means for him as a person. So, what is cloning? Just in case you don't understand, or just to get the fundamentals of it, cloning usually means just making a copy of yourself. That's the general consensus of what cloning is. Making a copy of yourself. For instance, you see me, what if there was a 2 of me? Like, there was another person right beside me that looked exactly like me, wore the same clothes. That's clone, okay? We kind of know what clones are. However, when you think of a clones, this goes into more of a controversial and moral discussion, because there's been many debates throughout the past about cloning, AI, different things like that, that lead into a lot of controversial subjects. For instance, can they learn? Are they their own person? Are they just you? I mean, there's a lot of moral topics about this, especially when it comes to cloning or something. And this is one of those types of times, because Twice has an ability to where he can make a copy of himself in doubling. And we see it presented in this chapter to where he showcases that him, the original, or whoever was the original, he made a copy of himself. And then that copy made a copy, so the copies can use the ability too. That copy made a copy, that copy made a copy, and so on. You get my point. So, Twice, from what we could see, can only make one copy, and then that copy can make a copy, which then he can make the original, like he can make an army of himself. Now, if this would have been any normal type of manga or literature, usually if a character has cloning, there's no complications. Usually the clone will listen to the original owner, with a snap of a finger. There's no problem. I've seen it many times in other series. A clone will listen to the original owner, and that made him. There's no issues, there's no arguments, there's no chance of that clone trying to kill you. Nothing like that usually happens. Usually. And the way this was done, it showed that that's not gonna work. The clones are different people. Now, this is leading into more of a moral discussion. When you think of clones, and you think of the original, you gotta think about their origins. Let's look at the origin of the true person that, got the quirk. The original, that started it all. The original, he was born like a normal human. A normal human being he was born, thanks to a mother. However, the clones, they were born thanks to an ability. The man splitting himself and making a copy of himself. Now, that would mean that the starting point between the original and the clone instantly is different. Even if the clone has memories and can retain everything that the original has and looks the same and everything speaks the same, the starting point is instantly different. Now, this goes into an even further controversial topic. If this person, the clone, has the ability to learn and the ability to think for themselves or understand what's going on around them, then this person automatically will know he is different from the original. For instance, he knows he's a clone, he knows he was created, he isn't the normal type of person. He was born differently. And that's going to change some functions of his personality. The way he views himself or views the world around him is going to change his personality, automatically making him different from the original owner of the ability. Then, if the original, makes a copy of him, and that, copy that's self-aware now makes a copy, that copy's going to realize he was born thanks to that. He's going to be like, different too. He's going to be a different person as well, because the way he was born, and vice versa as it carries on. So automatically, the copies have a different starting point. They feel different or think differently than the others before them. Even if they have the same personality or mindset, that can change thanks to the origin of how they came about. Then on top of that, we gotta view how the original, the owner of the ability, was forcing everyone that was clones to work for him, and he was the king. Those individual clones that could think for themselves and they're their own person, they automatically might not like that. They would want to rebel against this person because they want to be the original. They don't want to be someone that is a clone, someone that does the bidding of someone else. They feel like they are the original since they have all the memories of the original man. They feel like they could step up and be the original. That's how they feel. So this leads into to where there was an argument, a debate between all of them to where who is the original. I am the original, I'm the original, you're the original. They were all having an argument, which led into a bloodbath, and they decided to kill each other. Now, from the details we can gather from his quirk ability, which twice lets us know at the end of the chapter, is that if the clones take a certain amount of damage, they will disappear. They will disappear. Now, this is something that we could speculate about, but it's not concrete evidence yet. But when he says they can disappear, we have to question something about this ability. Let's just say all the clones that were made. We know there was at least 5 clones made. If you look at the 3 panels, 2 out of the 3 panels you see 5 clones. On the final one you see 6 pools, like, whatever, dead. I think it's the twice bodies all dead that turned into like puddles. But in 2 of the 3 panels, you see 5 clones, even the original king. Now, when you think about all this, okay, we gotta factor in that what would happen if the king was killed, but the other 5 clones were alive? What would happen to those clones? See, this is what I'm getting at. If the original person that started it all was to die, and then all the clones, they start killing each other, and then the last one standing is alive, would that man become the original owner? Would he be the one that is now the original? Because if he takes enough damage, he'll disappear. But I mean, if his quirk ability is doubling, and then he could split himself but thanks to his other clones, and if his other clones died, would that make him the new original? That's a lot of, theory crafting we can make about this character right now, because If all the others died and the original died, like if we know for a fact the original died and all the clones died and like one survived, would that man become the original, and then could he split and start the entire cycle again? That is the question I have right now, because it is stated if they take a certain amount of damage, they can disappear. Yes, but we don't know what happens if the original dies and when the clones start killing each other. Is it up for debate of who could possibly be the main original now? Now, getting off of that, let's talk about something else. The big thing, okay? We know, as a character now, Twice questions if he is even the original. He questions, is he truly the original? Because, I mean, everybody had a fight in the past, and clearly he's the last one standing. They had a fight, and he doesn't even really know if he is the original or not of all the, clones. He doesn't know if he's the first clone, the second clone, third clone, or even the main origin. He has no idea. And this makes him question himself, like, where did I come from? What was my origin? And it's sad when you see this, and it makes you speculate what he really is. Because let's go back to what I just earlier stated. Go back to the page to when he talks about his ability, and you see the clones, okay? Go back to that page and view it for yourself as I discuss this. Like, pause this video right now, pause it right now, go to the page to where he talks about his abilities, and when you see the clones, pause this right now, and then go to that. And then reopen this video. Now, if you look at the page, top one, okay, you see the clones making more clones. You see the original making a clone, and then that clone makes a clone. You see that line, and then you see one that's kind of off screen with a panel covering it, which we can assume is 5 clones, and then the original makes 6. So there's 6 people in total. If you go to the bed scene to where the king is sitting down and everybody's doing his bidding, you see a total of 6 people. You can count 5 clones, and then, the king, which makes 6. Now, if you go into the bottom panel, where supposedly a bloodbath happened 1 week and 2 days, you see blood on the floor, but you also see some form of clearish type liquid on the floor, too. And if you count these different puddles, there is 6 puddles. Now, let's go back to the first 2 panels I talked about. We know there's 5 clones, 1 original, and then, that's what was showed in 2 panels. The final panel shows 6 puddles on the floor. The only thing I could assume is that these 6 puddles are the clones, or Twice in general. And you see the person that's standing there, which is supposedly the Twice we now know, he's alive. And that makes 7. If you count all the puddles, but also Twice that was standing there in that panel, that makes 7, not 6. So, my theory here, now, like I said, this could be wrong. It's just a theory. I'm not saying this is correct or not. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this is a theory. So hear me out. What if, after all of the Twices killed themselves, like they all killed each other, what if somehow the quirk ability made it to where, like, some of the little remaining of life they had or whatever, it all merged into what Twice is now. And that's kind of what Twice is, since he makes the 7th copy. Now, another possibility is Twice, the original, or whoever the clones, they might have made another copy, and it just wasn't shown. But I highly doubt, since Horikoshi has showcased really great writing, and also foreshadowing in the past, he would not make 2 out of the 3 panels showing the clones. He wouldn't show 2 out of 3 panels showing 5 clones and then the main king, and then show 6 puddles on the bottom. That's just not happening. So, I'm assuming the reason why there's a 7th is because the 6 that were there, even the original, turned to mush, and the one that was left standing, or when they all died, they became whatever he is now. That's probably what's going on there. So, getting off of that, let's just talk about in general what this means. Twice is mentally fucked up. Like, he's really mentally fucked up because of what happened to him. And this is not the first time we've seen a quirk ability fuck someone over to this extent. We've seen quirk abilities do negative things to the main owner of them. And once again, this is another one of those examples, an extreme example of how some that seem to me have an overpowered quirk is actually something that could really hurt them in the end. Because if this would have been a normal series, Twice having a cloning ability would have been OP, but also not this negative towards him. But thanks to Horikoshi and wanting to add a little bit more depth to his characters in these layers, cloning is something very bad for someone, because it could add split personalities, change your viewpoint, and I like that. I like the way Horikoshi did that. So, keep writing great abilities like this, and keep, diving into these abilities we've heard about so often, and then give them more depth to them. I would like to see more stuff like this. It's definitely surprising and something I like to see. And, I mean, just overall, seeing the way this was done, it was a very tasteful way to handle it. I mean, Horikoshi continues to surprise me. If you think about everything he's done throughout the series, he's always, given spotlights to characters. This shouldn't have came out as a surprise to see a villain have a spotlight, but it still was. I mean, at the end of the day, if you really look at this chapter and you just break it down, it was a chapter entirely focused on the villains, but also on a character twice. It was focused on him and seeing how he interacts with the world around him, but also how everybody kind of views him, or how maybe his friends in the villain association might view him. And it shows you that not all villains that are a part of the world are villains or evil for the sake of being evil. They're not two-dimensional villains, and I appreciate that. There's many villains throughout manga or literature that are just evil for the sake of being fucking evil, or being an asshole because they just want to be an asshole. There's many villains like that, and Twice having this motivation of why he's a villain, because the only people that could accept him was the villains, I appreciate that. It adds a layer to him that, when he finally is someone that stands in the spotlight as a villain and he's causing issues for Izuku, Bakugo, Todoroki, and all of our other characters, I can respect him as a character because he's not evil just to be evil. He's doing these things because of his upbringing, which goes back to Shigaraki, how he is as a person too, and how a lot of these characters are not just evil to be evil. They have their own reasons. Stain is a perfect example. I love Stain, I love Shigaraki, and this is another character to join some of the great writing of all these characters throughout the series. So yeah, enough of that. Let's get off of that. Let's talk about the other stuff going on in this chapter. Little pieces of details going on besides what happened with Twice. So the villains, besides Twice, get a bunch of spotlight. We get to see the viewpoint of the villains and how they are changing. And this is a very welcome addition to the story, because throughout the last arc, we've seen how the Hero Society has changed quite a bit after All Might stepping down, the symbol of peace. And I discussed this a long time ago, after the fight with All for One and One for All. After that fight happened, I discussed with All Might being in what state he is now, it's going to change a lot. Not just for the heroes, but for the villains. All the villains that have been done in by All Might that are probably out or free are going to want to probably kill All Might since he's in a weakened state. But also, villains that have been hiding in the shadows for a very long time because of what All Might has done, they're finally going to walk out of those shadows and roam the streets. That is what will happen since the symbol of peace is no longer there. And the number two, Endeavor, he's not looking to, fill those shoes of All Might. He's not going to fill those shoes at all. So, the villains are now undergoing a lot of changes. It's not just the heroes, but the villains too. We know how the heroes, they have been developing and changing. For instance, to work together, to realize that how they've been operating as heroes this entire time, these pro heroes, they need to change that. Operating for money or personal gain and your own selfish desires is not something that will work anymore after what has happened with All for One and All Might stepping down, and then, what Stain did and how he changed the viewpoint of the general populace. That stuff's not going to work anymore. It changed how heroes operate, and that can be said for the same for the villains. The villains have changed quite a bit after what Stain has done, because we've seen it, but also after All Might stepping down, the villains are changing for the worse. I guess the better, because in their perspective, they're changing for the better, but they're becoming more villainous. And that's what we see. Like, we see a couple of villains in this chapter that seem to be doing some petty shit, but then you have these other villains that do some really, really heinous stuff, and, you have the one that's introduced with the Plague Doctor type mask, which I love that design, by the way. I love that Plague Doctor design. Ooh, I love that shit. So, just the way the villains are changing, it's not just the heroes, but the villains too. And I like how Horikoshi showcased this. It's not just heroes, but villains. Now, next to move into, let's talk about Endeavor. So, Endeavor is someone that's been in the spotlight recently, and one of the kind of key focuses of the last arc with Todoroki and Inasa. We know Todoroki and Inasa, they had a big dispute, an argument, or they just didn't work together and all that, and it caused a big issue in their exam because of what happened in the past, but also Endeavor. And we know they've corrected this, and they're going through character development right now to change this, but it's thanks to Endeavor how this all started in the first place. And Endeavor has been showcased to not be the proper proper viewpoint for a hero. He's someone that's very selfish, he has his own goals, he's a very shitty human being in general, and as we know, he's always wanted to surpass All Might. He's always wanted to be better than him. He used his own son to try to beat All Might. It's just, he's a very disgusting individual, and the way he treats the general populace around him is not something you would see a hero normally do, and so not many people really like this man. I mean, he's like number 2, he's the second greatest hero, and he's now the number 1 because of All Might stepping down, but he's not someone that could fill All Might's shoes, and he knows this, but also everybody around knows this, and you gotta think from his perspective, but also how people view him too. Endeavor's entire goal was stripped from him. We gotta remember, this is a man that spent majority of his career trying to beat All Might, but then all of a sudden, All Might just steps down because his time is running out. He's been weakening, and Endeavor can never bridge that gap between him and All Might. He can never beat All Might, and All Might finally steps down. It's kind of like this. It's like your idol literally shitting on you, or your idol just dying before your eyes, and you lose that. And that's what happened. Endeavor lost that goal, that idol that made him continue to try to better himself, or at least become stronger. Not better himself as a person, but just become stronger and to become greater. And with All Might stepping down, it's like he slapped Endeavor in the face, like, fuck you, you know, you're not worth my time. And now Endeavor, he's in a spot. He's like, I don't have that drive I once had. But then also the general populace, the way they view this man is very negative too. Because we get to see social media, or Google search results, or I guess the, you know, the term mogul in this case with search results. And if you're aware of search results in general, you should know that when it comes to searching things online, especially Google, YouTube, like if you were to type in chocolate bar or favorite candy, and if let's say it says favorite candy Snickers bar, then you know, Crunchy bar or whatever, that's generally what many people are searching for. They're searching for those type of candies. And if you type in something like that and you see those search results, that's what many are searching for. So when you type in Endeavor and you see the first result as hero, but then the 2 underneath it are hated, even scary, that's bad. That's really, really bad, because as we know, there's a lot of people looking that up to change those results, but also, for that to even be said, you know what many people think about this man, how they view him. So Endeavor's not in a good spot. He's not in a good spot with the populace, and he's also just, he knows he's not in a good spot because he lost that drive thanks to what happened to All Might. So Endeavor getting potential character development depending on where it goes. So yeah, chapter overall, a very, very, very good chapter. Cannot wait to see more from Horikoshi. Very well done. Very, very well done. Much respect, Horikoshi. You continue to amaze me. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you feel about Twice as a character? How do you feel about his mental state? How do you feel about his quirk ability? How do you feel about Endeavor? How do you feel about how the villains are changing? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.